Andy Jennings, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you.
Yeah.
We were thinking, we just had your son, Evan Jennings, on, and how much fun that was. He's a bright guy. You've done a good job.
Oh, yeah.
You've done a good job with that one. With all your kids, really.
Oh, yeah.
Nick is here as well. A little subtle wave. But we figured we would start with your recent trip overseas. What was that about?
Okay, so our daughter, Jane, is studying over there.
No way.
Yep, she's doing a semester abroad. It's at a King's College, which I don't know exactly the affiliation or what. You know, I didn't look into it that much.
It's associated with a different university.
With Cornell. Yeah.
Oh, with Cornell. Okay.
Yep. So
Cornell. That's where the office. What's his name? Andy Bernard went to Cornell.
Yeah.
Ever heard of it?
Yeah.
So what year is she there?
I think she's graduating 2026.
Okay.
So she's a junior.
Yep.
And going into senior year next year.
Oh man.
Yeah. But yeah, she's a junior now. So she went over to England and she's studying there.
What is her major?
Government.
Okay.
Yep.
So she's
Yep.
over there studying.
Yeah.
English government.
Well,
No,
yeah,
the
actually,
worst
no, you're
ones?
exactly
No.
right.
Is it really?
British politics or something like that is one of them.
Oh yeah, they're not like
Russian history maybe, or Russian something.
That's a little dicey subject.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Interesting.
there's a lot to it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of history, they've done a lot of crazy things.
Continue to do so.
And yeah, they don't disappoint. They're not slowing down.
They're living up to their reputation.
Yep. Hold my vodka.
Yep.
So anyway, and she was over there for a semester, so we decided we had to go over there and see her, keep her company a little bit.
That's a good excuse.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. And so we are very much into Pride and Prejudice, those dramas, those BBC British dramas.
They're so good.
Yeah. And
it's like a guilty
that's
pleasure.
The best one.
Yeah.
That's the best one.
Like which
all
one?
The Pride and Prejudice. It's
Like-
6 hours.
Okay.
The 1995.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's.
Yep.
The other ones are just kind of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
another thing to
Contentious
watch.
topic. Yeah.
Right. Snacks, but that's the full meal.
Yep.
Anyway, so we went and visited some of the spots from
Oh, cool.
from Pride and Prejudice.
Like some of the estates, or
The actual estates where they filmed it.
Wow, that's pretty
Rosings
cool.
Park and
Okay.
Pemberley. Those are just made up
Okay,
names.
yeah,
but
yeah.
To actual place. The actual place was Belton Estate and Lime Hall.
Really?
Yep.
That's pretty
And
cool.
So yeah. So
Nice.
just kind of did some exploration.
Is it possible to get like starstruck by a place?
Pemberley is that,
Is that a
kind?
thing?
Pemberley's
Yeah. Oh,
the Mr. Darcy's, right?
Mr. Darcy's place.
so
Yeah,
possibly.
exactly. Oh yeah, for
That's
sure.
like the big one.
So you must be there and be like, this
they're
is
so
right
impressive.
where it was.
I mean, these houses, just to think of what it was like and why there was this. It was a very different kind of setup to have this very public, major political figure in every county. Whereas you think about it now, like our county legislatures and our mayors, and they're not like major figures who have serious authority. Mm-hmm. Whereas back then, everything kind of had to go through that person in that county.
Okay.
And
Fascinating.
Just interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
How
Jane
that
would be an
all
expert
worked.
on all this.
What?
She'd be an expert on all this now.
Well, I mean, it's more modern British politics and like how Parliament works and all that stuff is what she's
Pretty interesting.
studying. Yeah,
Completely different.
pretty different. Yeah,
How so? I don't know.
yeah, that's a good
Like,
question.
is it
Is
like
there-
the Canadian Parliament
yeah,
where
is
they
there-
just argue with each
Yeah.
other a
like
bunch?
Canadian Parliament?
Oh, yeah, okay.
And the way they form, like they quote form governments. It's not like you just elect everything. It's like you elect them, and then they form coalitions and all this stuff. And it's like instead of two parties, it's like multiple. I mean, there are 3 or 4 parties, major parties, but there's like multiple coalitions, and like you have to join 2 coalitions together to get a majority to get a government and have your prime minister. Kind of like when you think of the Speaker of the House a little bit, like the Rhinos and the MAGA Republicans, they're stuck together because they're in a party. But if they weren't, maybe they would get together and say, okay, we'll tolerate each other so that we can, do
Interesting.
the prime minister. So
How come Well, I mean, we can get into that a little bit later about our system here and why it kind of devolved into basically a two-party system. Where like if you're in Canada, and if we have lots of Canadian friends, so like I'll talk to them and be like trying to pick their brain how it works.
Right.
But they'll say like we've got like 10 parties, we've got all kinds of different factions, and everybody kind of votes different ways based on where they're from. I'm like, I wonder if that's better.
Is it because there are laws against like incentives? So like in our country, yeah, there's the two-party system works because there's not a whole lot in place stopping people from making money and raising money to push one specific party. Whereas in other countries, is that less common? It's like illegal to do that. And so the two-party system never really caught hold. I don't know. Is that unique? Is that unique to America?
Since way back. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I honestly haven't studied that all that much.
I wonder.
I know, probably
Like
in
super
high school
PACs
and then
and
in
stuff.
college they hit upon it for a paragraph, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Right.
And then I forgot.
Our education system is awesome. Okay, so how long were you over there for? Is that all
A week.
You just went and
Yep.
saw the
Went,
things and saw her?
saw Jane. We're in London. Went around and saw Parliament in the Buckingham Palace.
Big Ben.
Yeah, Big Ben.
Cool.
I actually got stuck in a roundabout at one point. I did. I kept missing my exit. Oh man! So yeah, driving in England.
Oh, a road roundabout.
Yeah,
Oh,
that was
I
that
pictured
was
like
what
a
that thing was. That was what the Big Ben Parliament. Do you remember the Vacation? European
Yeah,
Vacation,
yeah.
Chevy Chase. That
Yep.
was sort of the
Oh.
joke. Was he was going around this roundabout. He's like, kids, Parliament, Big Ben, and then they went around again. He's like, kids, Parliament, Big Ben.
I was
You
picturing
couldn't get
like,
out of it.
those turn doors that you get into buildings. Like you got stuck in one of those.
Pretty much,
Yeah,
much
kind
the
of.
same thing, but driving.
Same concept.
But driving on the right side of the vehicle with the stick shift in my left hand.
Ooh.
I had a stick shift. It was manual.
That's not.
Yep.
Can't do that.
Driving
Is
on
the
the wrong
clutch-
side of the vehicle,
Yeah.
on the wrong side of the road.
And your
With the
hands
stick shift
and your
in the wrong-
dexterity is the wrong
Everyone
way.
asked, are the pedals different too? That's the only one thing that was the saving
I was
grace.
Why would they
I
figure?
was
Pedals.
not going to ask that.
The pedals were not different.
Definitely
so
wasn't
that,
going to ask that.
Everybody
I would
asked
have
that.
returned the rental car. But it was $50 more a day to have an automatic.
Really?
I wasn't paying that. I'd risk my life for that much.
I was going to say, it does sound like a pretty big risk.
I would stay in a roundabout for an hour. That's crazy.
Yeah.
No, I think I would do the same thing. I'd be like, wait, I forget how to drive now. Somebody else help me.
Was that really weird?
It was really weird.
Yeah, it does sound like
And
it'd be
was-
difficult.
Okay, so I'm on the wrong side of the road, and they like you can pull over. Okay, and the roads are all very narrow, like ridiculously narrow, like
Yep.
4 inches. Your mirrors pass,
Okay.
and curbs and walls, like right there, like
Mm-hmm.
not a sidewalk, just sort of a wall and enough for one person to sort of go along.
No shoulders. Not
There's
really.
just a lot of that, yeah, and so then people can park in the traffic lane sometimes in the villages. So you have to. So you've got cars coming right at you. You got to go around. So you sort of have to wait or just sort of barely go past it. It was nerve wracking.
Yeah.
That's the only thing
I
about
heard,
going to Europe.
I heard that there's a reason why that is. Like roads in Europe are so narrow, and this could just be like some kind of old wives' tale. But they say that it's because they built their roads where, like, for centuries, like cities had already been established.
Yeah. No,
And in America, like
that's-
we build our cities where the roads go. So like our roads are bigger. Like we have free space to build roads, or we used to at least. Still do probably.
No, that's
and then
for
our
sure.
cities follow the
That's
roads.
for sure.
Yeah.
And if if something is in the way of a proper road width, we just sort of knock it down. 'cause
Yeah,
that's
true.
Blow it up.
because it's not like a 1,000-year-old legacy building.
We just kick the
exactly.
owners out and like buy
Yeah.
their property and build the road. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like all the new parts of most cities are like grids. All the roads are grids, and the buildings are built next to the roads. Boston's probably
exactly.
is Boston one of the only ones that's really not so much like that in the U.S. Because like Boston has some history.
I think you're right. Yeah.
seems
Maybe
like windy
Philadelphia
roads.
maybe has a little bit of
Yeah.
a old town city center, but
Yeah,
there isn't.
San Francisco.
They never
Watertown's
got
like
very
that.
big, and the old towns back in the 1700s, and they burned up a lot of times. There wasn't as much stone construction, so they just were torched and got built new. But
That's some crazy times.
that's one of the nice things about England. I mean, and Europe in general is that they've got those old stone, beautifully built buildings that are just a link back to the distant past. So that's definitely one of their valuable, one of their what do you call it? That's sort of the heritage,
Endearing
that they
qualities. Yeah,
endearing, and
I feel
and
like
economically, it's huge for them. Tourism you know,
Right.
in most of the major European countries, tourism's huge.
Yeah, you think Europe, you think London, you think Paris,
Right.
you know, you think
Italy.
everywhere in Italy, Rome.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think it's the majority. It's the biggest segment of Italy's
Like
economy.
GDP.
Yep.
I'm sure you could find the breakdown easy, like how much they rely on that. Like if something happened and those buildings weren't there and the history wasn't there, like would anybody go there?
Not as many.
Not as many.
No, for sure. But it's fun because then it's just around every corner. You're just like, oh my gosh. It's just so different and so old.
Yeah.
Yep.
My wife's family is of Italian heritage, so we got to get out there. And then I've got like French, German, Swiss.
Yep.
So
Yep. Oh yeah.
Switzerland's on the list,
Yep.
on the old bucket list. Italy. I don't know if we would get to like England. You'd say to go for sure.
I would say to go, but I mean, definitely Italy and your you know, heritage and your ancestors first. That's definitely.
Yeah.
Food can't be that great in England. It's pretty
It is that good.
Is it?
It is.
It
Oh my
looks pretty
gosh.
terrible.
See?
No,
There you
it's
go.
that good.
You heard it here
It's
first.
Yorkshire pudding.
No, that's
bread.
different.
100%. No, people go nuts for the Sunday roast and the Yorkshire pudding. So, yep, no, it's true.
Is it good?
You know what it is? I mean,
Yeah.
Yorkshire pudding is just that puff pastry.
Yeah, it's puff pastry
with
with gravy and
beef.
Roast is like anything cooked. Like it could
Well,
be.
yeah.
You know, if it's like made in an oven, they call it roast. Is that what it
I'm
is?
just telling you, everything I ate there was remarkably good.
the gravy
They
is
were
the
serious about
It's
it.
probably because it's not full of pesticides and stuff too.
Meat pies and
Had the
meat
weirdest
pies.
names for foods. That's the problem. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
for
pigeon pie.
Shepherd's pie. Yeah, like
bangers and mash.
right, exactly. Like,
Yes.
doesn't sound too good, but I'll take your word
Yeah.
for it. I'll take your word for it.
Oh yeah, and the names of the towns are hilarious. It's like, you know, they can't just have normal English sounding names. It's all just like off, you know, just totally weird English. Yep. There was
Wilhelm Street.
one called Much Wenlock.
Much Wenlock.
Much Wenlock. Yep. And everything's something on something, and you know.
That sounds. I gotta go.
Beans on rice or beans on toast.
Oh well, I
Toast road.
Toast on toast.
That's a food, right? Beans on toast.
oh yeah, yeah. No, that's one of the
Okay,
breakfast items.
so just being
Why is
fresh off the
everything a
boat.
pudding? I don't get it.
Does did you have pasta over there? I mean, I know Italy's mostly like the pasta place, but like everybody goes to Italy and they're like, I ate as much pasta as I wanted and I didn't
There's
get
a lot of good
bloated.
Italian food in England too, because
Okay.
I don't know,
Just 'cause it's
Italians. I think Italians everywhere in Europe, you'll see that's like if you're in Germany, there's German restaurants and Italian. I mean, there'll be Asian too, but definitely Italian, definitely amazing pizza everywhere you go. Because Italians come up and start. You know, since the EU, especially Italians can migrate up and start pizza joints and make a bundle. And
Did you have some?
yep,
Amazing.
very good. Yep, it was very good.
Okay, because you know, like in the people will go to Europe and then they'll come back and be like, I ate whatever I wanted over there and I didn't feel like garbage.
Yeah,
Is that true? Kind of.
I mean, pretty much, I guess. I don't know. I don't notice that as much,
Yeah.
but but no, it was definitely good food and really nice people. You know, very friendly people, and it was nice to be able to speak English in a foreign country. You know, I mean, you can in most countries, but still to have it be actually English.
Yeah.
That was good. That was nice.
Do they make fun of us the way we talk?
I'm sure
It's
they
not proper
I'm sure
English.
They did behind my back. They didn't.
Listen to this American
Straight
over
to my
here.
face. Oh, there were some chuckles. There were.
They just assume you're from Texas.
Yeah, everybody's from
Who's this
Texas.
guy?
Well, even in the U.S., it's so huge. Like the U.S. is huge compared to like even Europe. How far is England from Italy in miles? Let's fact check it.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'm gonna have to make a guess though.
Okay, yep. Let's see, Nick. What's your guess? Let's do London to Rome.
London to Rome. Okay, I'm gonna say 450.
Nick,
Is Rome southern Italy or northern Italy?
Rome's central. Yeah. So yeah. It says it's like 1,000 miles,
No idea.
1,100. But
Okay.
how far is it from New York to San Francisco?
Virginia would be like 1,000 miles, right?
Is it really?
Here, no.
No.
Less.
New York to
I think
San
Virginia would be
Francisco.
450, 500 range from here.
Wow, really? Virginia? Okay.
From here to San Diego is 2,700 miles. So it'd be like in the Midwest. So going from here to the Midwest.
Here to so like here to Nashville or
That's
Memphis
crazy.
or something.
Well, it's not as small as I thought.
Would be about like Rome, probably. I
And
guess.
really, realistically, Italy and London, there's full countries in between there.
Yeah,
Germany, France.
Yep.
Yep. All the little ones are along the way.
Ollie really wants to participate today.
Yeah, I know.
He's okay.
It's all right.
He's okay.
Dog cast.
Dogcast.
What's the matter?
Okay, so we thought it'd be really fun to. So when I think of you, especially, I think of obviously, man of God, great father, great husband. But I also think of somebody who's very active in their community, cares about their community. I know you've ran for school board, stuff like that. So I want to kind of get into the importance of what that means to you, but more importantly, who the core of you is and what you're passionate about. Does that sound good? Let me just see. I'm just going to reset the cameras real quick, and then we'll get right into that. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, cool. So we're going to get in the meat and potatoes. Or the...
Bangers and mash.
we want to get right into the
Get
bangers.
a nice
Whatever-
gravy.
whatever-
Put the gravy on the
The
toast.
puddings.
All right, we'll be right back with the bangers and the mash. All right, we're back. So I thought it would be nice for anybody who doesn't know you just to know who you are and what's important to you. So you just take it away.
Okay. Yeah, Andy Jennings. I grew up out west, actually. I grew up in Montana, so that's kind of different.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yep, I did. I was born in Burlington, Vermont, but we moved not too long after that out to Montana.
Whereabouts?
In Great Falls, Central. Kind of on the plains, but you could see the mountains on the horizon.
Sounds like a dream.
And it was good. I mean, it was nice. It's, people are always like, why aren't you back there?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? Things are, there's a good and a bad. You know, there's really great stuff about every place. And, I mean, I wouldn't mind it, but I've got connections here. I've got, my mom actually grew up in Rochester.
Okay.
Heather's dad grew up in Watertown. So we've got quite a bit of connection back here. And, so
Expensive.
ended up actually coming out here because we wanted to buy a farm, and it was a lot cheaper out in New York State than it was Montana. There weren't that many farms. There wasn't, unless you were just going to do a big grain operation or a big beef operation, which is crazy expensive to start.
Sure.
Land might not be that expensive, but California people were moving in too, so it was the prices were jacking up, and it wasn't really, so it made sense to move here. We did, and the Lord moved us around from where we thought we were going to be in the Finger Lakes area up to here, but we're glad He did. So
When was that? When did you get back to New York?
2000
Okay.
Y2K, baby.
Oh,
wasn't
man.
really
You survived.
Decided to
about
go
that.
rural.
We
Did
were,
you survive that?
but yeah, I guess we didn't use computers all that much actually at the time. So if it had crashed, we'd been fine.
Was it Nick? Was it you that was talking to me about Y2K and how there was actually, because everybody
Jobs,
on the
yeah.
outside who doesn't really know about it, like, oh, it was just a big nothing and whatever, and everything just kept going. But you were telling me about that team or something that
Yeah,
was
people
actually
had jobs to like try to change computers. Like it was
To
legit.
figure it out.
Office Space. You ever seen Office Space? That's
show.
what the movie where like the guy
Oh.
like hates his corporate life and like decides to just like stop caring. So like that's what they do at their company. They just like that's like the
was
joke.
their big-
It's
their
very
big
boring.
project.
Like pointless and boring is like the joke.
But was
'Cause
it
ended
like
up being
super
pointless.
serious? Like,
Yeah.
hey, if we don't get this
I think
figured
so.
out by
Was it?
They were saying, I mean, the actual
It
disturbance
was like the
wasn't
dates
that
and
much.
yeah, but like
yeah,
it
there
was
was,
like
like-
the computers, the dates on the computers and how it affected the data once the year 2000 came. Like could have been catastrophic for the because the binary system that computers communicate with and how the dates something.
all the dating, all the dates that interface with all data. And
So they were
the
trying to
movement of
figure out
things.
how to like re-engineer the way that computers think and run to like avoid
with a
calamity.
deadline.
Yeah.
People had jobs doing that.
Yeah. I remember this Indian friend of mine. He's like, you've got to realize it's very important. It's like billions of lines of code.
Yeah, he's probably,
Okay, we'll get to it.
I will take seriously. Go ahead.
What happened to those jobs as soon as like 2000 hit and everyone was like, Oh,
Thank you for saving
you
everything.
You know about the tech bubble bursting, right? That may have been part of the reason.
Thanks for saving everything. You're fired.
Yep.
We'll talk to you in the year 3000.
No, it was less of a disturbance than we thought. I mean, we didn't get too much into the prepper stuff. Although I looked at it and I was thinking about that, but we were wanting to move back. We were in California at the time.
Okay.
Working at this college, I was sort of teaching / mostly just. I was the farm manager, and the students worked in the farm program, so I was kind of overseer of a student program.
Interesting.
And
like an agricultural program, or
Yep.
Yep.
And so they were, but we were kind of wanting to have our own place and do our own farm, and so we were already in the process of that. But Y2K was coming, and it's like, oh well, that's handy. I'm glad we'll be moving to our own place, and I bought gold at $300 an ounce. You ever looked at gold? Now?
Yep.
Unfortunately, I sold it at like $800 an ounce a few years later. But
I was going to say, now it doesn't drop below 800.
I know.
No,
it hasn't forever. Yeah, if I kept it then, I'd probably have a nicer house. But
same with Bitcoin. Yeah,
I feel like everybody has a story like that. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Like, I had some land back then. What's it worth now? Oh, I had some Bitcoin back then.
Oh, yeah. Ezra Segrist was telling us that about the property he owned in Florida. He's like, high in sight, like I should have just held on to it and just let it appreciate
the way
itself.
Florida went nuts during COVID.
Oh, man, everywhere went nuts. Mm-hmm. Okay, so moved up here.
Year 2000.
What about this place was like, this is it?
We were desperate and had nowhere else to go.
That's always a good indicator.
God uses that, you know?
Yeah.
No, but this is kind of a funny story. We were at Heather's grandma's place in Chameau.
Okay.
Which is kind of our connection to Chameau. I don't know if you've noticed that. We've got a place there now and stuff. But anyway, we were at her grandma's lake house, and we were waiting for a farm to close. We'd agreed on a price and agreed on a plan, and I was going to go down the next day and start doing second cutting of hay with this guy and just kind of learn his equipment. And he had a job with the town, and they were just getting done with farming and wanted to move off. And so he was going to show me all the equipment, and then we were going to take it over, over the next month after that. We were going to move our stuff in. They were moving their stuff out, and it was all going to work out. And this is the third place that had sort of fallen through. And so anyway, I called him up. I was like, hey, I forgot what his name was, Tim. So we're on for tomorrow morning, and I'll head down. And he's like, Andy, I hate to say this, but we decided we don't want to sell. I'm like, wow. Really? Seriously? And he's like, yeah, I'm so sorry, but what can you? What are you gonna do? We evict him, throw him and his wife and kids off the front porch. Right. Yeah. So we're just like, oh my goodness, what are we gonna do? And we went out walking that night and praying, and because that was a big. We had our kids. We had 3 kids and a trailer full of our stuff towed behind our truck with a camper, like a cab over camper on it. That was our thing. We'd been in that for 6 months going. We'd gone to a couple different friends' places and then worked on a sheep dairy, actually, milking sheep and making cheese.
Okay.
And we're going to possibly take that over, but that didn't end up working out. The owners weren't Christians, and we just didn't see eye to eye, and it just wasn't making sense to do that transition there and take over. So anyway, we're there and at her grandma's place, and we're just like, what do we do? And prayed, and the next day, her grandma was like, I called my friend Marion in Watertown. She's a real estate agent, and asked her what she had, and she's going to get back to you. And so then later on that day, I forget exactly how it went. A lady from over this way called us, a real estate agent, because that lady had called a lady in Lewis County, because she's like, there are more farms in Lewis County. They should look there. And so this lady calls us, oh, do you want to come over and see some farms? We got a couple, not a lot, but a couple over here you can look at. And then somehow Ellen Chamberlain, someone heard that we would need a place to rent or something, and they're like, oh, I think this lady Ellen Chamberlain has rentals. We'll call her. Called her. They said, these you should reach out to these people. They are doing something with farming. They were kind of like, what are these, what are they doing? But anyway, they're doing something with farming, something with sheep. And so anyway, Ellen Chamberlain's like, Sean Harney has sheep. I'll tell him. So anyway, it was like, a game of telephone. Got to Sean Harney that day. he calls me. He gets my phone number and
Okay.
calls me up. And she said, "Could you call these people? And they're looking to farm here. You'll be able to help them." So he calls me and we're talking a little bit. And he's like, "Well, just come to our church on Sunday and we'll talk."
Got
So
it.
anyway, that was our first day at Rhema.
Yeah.
And stayed there for 15 years. So that was pretty cool. Yep.
That's
Wow,
insane.
what an adventure.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
That's not funny. What was it like going through that at the time? Especially like
With kids.
you're moving, you've got kids, you're all packed
nerve
up.
wracking,
Yeah.
Yeah.
unsettling. Would rather have shards of glass in my eyes.
What's that from?
That's from
Brian
Brian
Regan.
That's right.
Excruciating. Ouch. I'm running out of words. Horrific.
Anyway,
You know what that
So-
makes me think of? That makes me think of like what Tyson was saying last night about like just the generations before us. Like they did most of the hard work and like how easy we have it nowadays. Because that sounds like an adventure.
yeah, it was.
I don't think any of your kids are going through that right now.
No, I got him over it early and advised them against it as best I could.
Yeah.
No,
But that
I think,
does
I mean, adventure's good. You got to, we were talking, Brock and I were talking earlier about saunas and change metabolically and physically. Like you got to move, you got to change, you got to have stresses and excite, not excessive, but just movement. And so that was definitely a stretch.
Complete unknown.
Complete unknown. Yep. Yeah. And so, so then we rented a house out in in like Stony Creek Road, out Chase Lake Road, that area.
Yep.
Well, not far from here. Then a few months later, we finally got a farm, that one in Lions Falls. I don't know if you know, right before Cherry Street. That was our farm, that little green and white place.
I remember that.
Beautiful place,
Yeah, that's really. We had the barn dances there.
Yep, we had the barn dance there, and then that barn roof collapsed under a
bunch of barn dancers.
Lake effect. Yeah, not under. Actually, was that after?
The last
No, I
barn
think that
dance
was.
we ever had.
No, that was after. That was after the barn collapsed because we had rebuilt it
That's
and
right.
it had no hay in it because we'd
That's right.
taken all the hay out because we had to rebuild the roof.
Yeah,
But that was an interesting story. So I'm out in the we had organic dairy. We had 50 cows in the tie stalls. And then like probably 25 young stock in the sheds adjoined to it. Anyway, so I'm going through one night late. We probably got back from some church meeting because it was like basically farm church, That was about basically all we did.
Yep.
And always got back late, like shut down the church every time, last one's out. And so I was going, you push up feed one last time, because the cows have started eating their food and knocked it all over, and they push it up one more time before night, clean up the, scrape poop out from under them so they can lay down and they're clean. And I was going around pushing up feed around the outside one last time, and I rounded the corner to go down the one alley, and I see this pile of snow in the feed alley, and I was like, oh, that's a pain. Like the window on the outside broke in because the snow got so high because it would shed off the roofs. And, you would see the windows on the sides pile up with snow. So I figured, oh, golly, I'm going to have to replace a window now. And then I walked over there and the window right there is just fine. I was like, what the heck? And
Where's
I
the
look
snow
up
coming from?
and I see stars. And it was just like, no, I didn't see stars in my head. I saw actual stars. There was a hay chute there. There was an open hay chute.
It was supposed to have a roof on top of it?
It's supposed to have a roof on top. And I see stars. I was like, oh my gosh, the roof caved in. And it had been a really bad lake effect that night. And it was on the lee side of the barn, so where the snow would have deposited.
Right, yeah. The wind pushes.
It's like 3 or 4 feet high of snow on that side of the barn. Had a little bit of weakness in the rafters. And we'd actually been working on fixing a few of them. There was like this laminated arch barn. It was one of those pointed top, round roof. Anyway, so it had caved in. And so that was like, oh, okay, this is a bigger. For a second there, I was like, oh, good. The window didn't break, so I don't have a big, it's no big deal. Just have to shovel this snow out of here. Wait a second. How did this snow get in?
Wait a minute.
So anyway,
Somebody's
was
playing a joke. I need
a little bit bigger.
shovel.
Yeah, a little bit of a
Shovelfuls
bigger
of snow
issue
in there.
than a broken window on the side.
That's wild.
Yep. So that was kind of the start of the transition out of that farm. We were just like, you know what, long term, the thing about right where that is, it's a beautiful spot, but it is actually the most busy highway section in Lewis County.
Route 26?
That part of 12.
12.
That part of 12,
Yeah, 12.
is where everything comes together in Lowville, funnels through there, and then breaks up again, 26, and whatever it is that goes down through Boonville. And
I like what you said about like even the roof caving in. Like that's something that some people would struggle with maybe, instead of like it's a hard thing to deal with. It's a lot bigger project than you thought. That would calculate as a hard time. Like that's a hard thing to have happen. But when you go through hard things, you become stronger. It builds character. You're more resilient. And that's how calluses are built.
Yep.
It's not through complacency. It's not through ease. It's not through comfortability. It's through like friction.
Yeah.
Difficult things. Yeah.
Resistance. Yep.
That's it.
Was that did you continue to farm for very long after that? You said you didn't stay at that place very long.
So we sold the cows not long after that because, so our barn roof is collapsed. We have to clear out the hay mow, rebuild the whole thing. It's winter. It's like February, January. I don't know what it was.
Negative 20.
So we Amos and Norm Metzler, actually, I went, because they were kind of my advisors, what would you call them, my mentors, and one of many. I mean, Sean Harney, of course, Bob Martin, but and more.
Those are some names.
Yep.
Some quality names.
Big farmers.
Yep. But anyway, so I called up Norm, and I was like, Norm, my hay mow collapsed. What do I do? He's like, we'll be down. Yep. So he's like, what is it? You know, I described to him. He's like, we've got some big boards. We'll come down. We'll prop it up, and then you can just finish feeding out the hay and make your plan, and you won't have, too much of an issue. And it's winter, so it's not going to like rain in your stable, because the cows were fine. It was just the hay mow. It was essentially, there was a decent amount of hay. That one side had collapsed onto the hay, and so it was resting, and it happened to be the higher side of the hay.
Oh, okay.
So we were able to just prop it up, and then we could feed out from below that. And we found a buyer for the cows probably within 2 months after that. So they finished most of the hay and found a buyer for the cows, sold the cows, and then that summer fixed the roof, had what was it, Stanley Yancey came in with his crew, fixed the roof, and put a new one on. And then we actually had kind of started with Icelandic sheep at that point anyway, so we kept going with that for probably a year, I think, maybe. So a year and a half, 2 years, I'm not sure how long we were on that farm, but we were, we listed it, but it took a while to sell. And then found that's kind of a funny story, was when everything came together to go to our new farm. We bought Pierce's place up on East Road, Dan Pierce's place. And but the guy who we were selling to was sort of playing us along. He wanted to basically have the farm sold. He was just a dealer, whatever, a property guy who wanted to flip it essentially before he had to even put any money on it. He wanted to have a buyer. So he signed for it, but he wanted to have a buyer for the property before he even had to put any money into it.
Sure.
But he wasn't getting a buyer, so he was sort of stringing us along for a few months, and we had this deal with Pierce's, and finally they're like, if you don't finish the deal soon, we're going to have to, it's out of the requirement of our, finishing the deal. And so anyway, Earl Dunkel, the lawyer, I don't know if you knew him, but he's Becky King's dad, Tom Dunkel's dad. Anyway, he was great. He pulled it together and made it happen. Yeah. So he's forever known as Slam Dunkel to us, because he made it happen. It was an interesting little, tense few days there where we got it done. Yeah. He was good. So anyway, transitioned to the new farm. We had all the sheep. I started working at Vestas on the windmills, and right from I saw him going up. I was like, I should look and see if I can get a job. So I went up there, talked to someone, ended up getting a job. And my first thing was going around and keeping the, doing inspections on incoming turbine parts, the big tower sections, the blades. I would go around with a clipboard and inspect, go through the checklist, make sure they weren't dinged up by the transport. And then I was taking care of keeping generators running because they had to have the FAA beacons, those flashing red lights, had to go all the time, and there was issues with the process flow, and they didn't have electrification. They didn't have electric to them, but the guys had already put them up, and so they've got these things way up in the air in the dark, at night.
Right.
They had to have these beacons, a certain number of them, or they got fined like $10,000 a day per beacon if it wasn't running.
Yeah.
So I had to go around keeping the generators running. It was just these little generators, so they would be running out. It was kind of like whack-a-mole,
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Seems crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Driving around at night,
a day per.
finding the turbine in the fog, and filling the generator again. But that was interesting. And then all the way through commissioning and all that, putting them together, getting them going.
Yep.
And then I did inspections and maintenance for a couple of years, climbing them. First few years.
Yeah, is that fun?
So Matt joined. Uncle Matt joined.
Okay, yep.
Yep, we worked. We were in the same.
Arms
We got to drive snowcats around in the winter.
Okay.
Out to the turbines because it was, they couldn't keep the roads plowed at first, and then I think now they can pretty much. Well, they do because they don't have the snowcats anymore, except maybe one or two for emergencies.
Yeah, Tyler was saying that they're getting even bigger. Are you familiar with that?
Taller?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think somewhat. I mean, they won't get that much bigger, but
yeah.
The higher you are, the more efficient the wind.
That makes sense.
The smoother.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I've heard that the wear and tear on a windmill is almost nullifies the benefit of using them for energy. Do you think that's true? Like the rate at which the blades degrade from friction, they're constantly repairing the blades like paper mache.
Yeah, certainly the per kilowatt generated, the maintenance costs are just way higher than say a natural gas turbine plant. Just way higher. Yeah,
fascinating.
So it's not very efficient.
What's the net? Yeah, what's the net?
Not great. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't be able to. It's a thing that had to be tried, and we gave subsidies to it so that it could be pioneered and tried, and but I think ultimately, I don't know. We'll see. If things change, it just depends on what the sort of economic structure is, the environment you're in. If something changes and
it can become more efficient. And
labor is cheap and fossil fuels are somehow
that's fascinating. I never really thought about it that way.
Super expensive, but I think going away from natural gas at this point, going away from natural gas plants that can be turned on and turned up and turned down according to the demand with ease.
Is that a distinction between
natural
gas and nuclear?
Well, nuclear. I mean, actually, in college, I studied nuclear waste quite a bit. And I was out in California, Nevada area. We went and visited one of the proposed nuclear waste dump sites, like containment sites, storage. And that was a huge cost, like a external cost they had to figure in. But they've gotten a lot better. So I think nuclear's going to have to come back myself. But
for efficiency and cleanliness. So what is the big stigma about nuclear?
Well, just the waste. The waste is radioactive for 10,000 years or something. So
where do you put it?
You've got this canister of waste every 6 months.
Okay.
Which you're like, oh, that's just not very much waste. But it's but it's radioactive for 10,000 years. And if it gets, that were all these issues like, well, we're going to put it in these remote salt mines. Well, but it's going to corrode the container it's in, like in 2,000 years. And then you've got this stuff leaking into your water.
It doesn't help that there's been 2 or 3 major accidents in the last 100 years that people, I don't know if people use that politically to, they've convinced the population that nuclear is dangerous, really to fuel their green energy initiative.
In the short term, especially.
Right. Yeah,
I think in 10,000 years, that's a little different than being like.
But in the short term, I mean, the whole nuclear meltdown, that was a big science fiction.
I mean, that's why Germany doesn't allow nuclear.
Horror story, and
Germany's super against nuclear.
Because of Chernobyl?
Because of Chernobyl, yeah.
And then there was 3 Mile Island. What was
3 Mile Island,
Japan,
Love Canal.
Fukushima?
No, maybe Love Canal was like
Fukushima?
Was like
somewhere in Japan.
Fukushima.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so because I was wondering that the waste thing makes more sense to me. Why why that would be the real reason. That would be the real cost, not
Right.
if we put one in the middle of South Dakota where nobody is,
Right.
what would be the fallout from an issue? Which
No pun intended.
nuclear jokes.
But it's I think it was mostly just fear and the whole nuclear weapons thing. You know how the no nukes, the whole Cold War thing had people totally scared about nuclear weapons, and nuclear energy was sort of connected mentally to that. And so it just all felt very scary, very unstable.
Whereas,
no pun intended.
Keep them coming.
We're on rocky ground right now.
Apparently, the technology's got to be.
This topic is radioactive.
I pretty much killed it there. That just ended it.
Was it? I don't know.
I love it.
Do you think that? I'm not sure how much you know on this topic, but I'll just ask you the question anyway because I just don't know. Do you
I'll
think
speculate on anything.
Great. All right.
I will confidently speculate on anything.
Do you think that?
Ask my kids.
Do you think
Ask
that
my wife.
the technology nowadays to safely operate a nuclear plant kind of blows the safety argument out of the water?
I think so. Yeah. That's what I've heard.
Wasn't some of the big reasons with those fallouts was because they were not well maintained? I've heard a lot of reporting about that kind of there's a lot of cover-ups because they were missing inspections. They weren't doing things how they were supposed to be doing.
Totally.
Led to this down the road.
Right. Totally. And Fukushima was a tidal wave. Yeah. Tsunami.
Right.
So, and even that, I don't think
put it there.
Well, don't put it there.
Just stop
the thing that's handy about that is just the cooling. You don't have to waste fresh water inland, which Japan doesn't have as much of, as just to use ocean water for cooling the cores or whatever. But but I don't think Fukushima is a long-term issue. I don't think it killed many people, if any. Or got many people sick. I don't think anyone died because of it, but I don't think it even got very many people sick. Which you don't want any of that. But think about the other things we do.
The trade-offs for coal and for whatever other power source you're using.
So
For sure.
I think when people really assess it, when you really think about it, I think nuclear will come back. But.
What about so the difference, the biggest difference then that makes a lot of sense to me because for a long time I think my perspective would have been people were scared, and that's the biggest trade-off for nuclear. But the reality is they generate a lot of nuclear waste, and it has to be put somewhere in 10,000 years down the road.
Yeah, that was a big sticking point. And also, sorry to interrupt, but also there was a whole fear about because nuclear waste apparently high level nuclear plant waste can be used for nuclear bombs.
Okay.
So if you had that stolen, so you've got a security risk and a toxic risk. So that was a big, that fed into it. But I think both of those aren't as critical. I think mostly it was just people's fear of nuclear and just sort of didn't want the whole Earth first and go back to the land and all that. People just didn't want to go that direction, I think. But I think in reality, when you start looking at fossil fuel and the issues with that, which I don't think are that huge, but they're big enough. It's polluting.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
I could solve this problem.
Oh, finally,
please
somebody.
I recently saw a picture of here's the other side of the Earth that they never show you because the famous picture of the Earth from space is North America, South America, Africa. It's it's the one shot of the Earth that you always see. Mm-hmm. But then the other side is it's all Pacific Ocean on the other side. It's almost the entire circle is
interesting.
blue.
Right.
That's a lot of area. It's a lot of space. Would it be too cost prohibitive or dangerous to bury our nuclear waste at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean?
I mean,
did I just solve a huge a problem?
I'll take my Nobel Prize now.
Yeah,
right.
It seems there might be
if we're
some
just gonna
issues.
bury it, well, we can there's ground in the ocean too, and there's half the world. It's 2/3 of the world that's not populated. There's nobody around.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I bet they studied it somewhat. I don't know about the studies, but you would have to study it. What realistically could happen? What are the variables?
I feel that's not a crazy thing to consider. Feels kind of wait a second. We have this huge area of the Earth that we do not use for anything. Not that we need to use every area of the Earth.
No,
it's not It's not how we should think about the Earth, I suppose. But anyway, what I was going to say earlier was it Elon Musk that said like the amount of radioactive waste is actually relatively small to the area that waste will have supplied power to? Is that nuclear? Is that true? You know what I'm talking about?
He talked about solar panels in North Dakota for like 100 square miles of power the country or something.
Earth.
Something crazy like that.
But I thought that there was like,
what does he know?
Maybe it was somebody
just
else that
building
like
rockets and
like somebody compared like a 10-pound can of size of nuclear waste, how large or how long that
could fuel, how many homes that could fuel or whatever.
The whole, like, people imagine that nuclear waste is just being dumped in tons and tons and tons is what would be happening, and that really it's relatively small. It's very efficient, and it's not as much as you think. But
like one barrel of nuclear waste, how long and how much would that power?
Yeah, it's like the nuclear waste is actually very, very small compared to what people imagine as far as how much work it did.
So is the answer then is
sure
fracking and like natural gas way cleaner, way easier to find, more efficient versus and the net negatives
like
are there's no net negative.
I think
it's not gonna be around forever.
The net negatives are less as far as we know. I mean, we kind of take what we know and compare them. And natural gas is like clean burning and readily available. There's lots of it, and the efficiency of those turbines is incredible, and the demand and supply, the ability, the flexibility to match, because that's important on the grid. You can't have too much power or you'll fry things, and you can't have too little or you'll be browning out and you'll fry things, and you'll leave critical facilities powerless and that kind of stuff. And so
the problem with natural gas is that let's see, using like, as far as oil goes, not natural gas, but oil goes, like most of that is used for plastic production, right? So people think of like, oil, we get gasoline from oil, that's how we drive our cars, but doesn't most oil go towards plastic production? And like, that ain't going to be around forever, so we almost need...
That's a good question.
Also, natural gas isn't going to be around forever.
What the amounts are. I mean, lubrication is huge, and fuel, and I don't know. As far as plastics, you'd have to look at the pie graph, but I don't know that one to say. Which one's biggest by far?
If we're speculating, I would speculate that our problem, our need for a new source of energy shouldn't be coming from like how good it is for the environment, but the urgency is going to come from the other kind that we're using is not going to be around forever, and we're using it for way more than just energy. We're using it for consumption.
Yeah. Well, originally natural gas was like a byproduct of oil. They wanted the oil, and natural gas was released at the same time as the oil from the surrounding rock, and they had to flare it off, and it was just wasted. Or just let it go, go into the atmosphere. And so it's a good thing we use it. And I do think it's a good source, and there is tons of it. I mean, there's way more than they thought. Like back when when I was a kid, they'd be like, the end of oil is near.
I even remember that in like the early 2000s.
Nowhere close.
Yeah, I remember they were like, we got 40 years left of oil. Remember that?
Yeah, exactly.
That was like a headline on the major news networks.
Global cooling and the end of oil, and now it's global warming, and there's tons of oil.
What?
Way more than we.
Are we being gaslit? Boom! Another.
Yes, we are.
So
man, we are killing it.
We actually have like there's plenty of oil. It's not going away anytime soon. Like that's not a real.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
There's no.
That's what they're telling us.
There's no. But it's polluting. To use it is polluting, but natural gas way less than oil. Coal's worse. Still, you can I still think we shouldn't cut ourselves off from it. I mean, that'll go into a little bit of a different subject, but the whole, like Germany giving up their nukes and giving up their coal, like they literally shut down. They had some of the richest coal mines and stuff in the world, and plants, efficient coal plants, and they shut them down because of green energy and all that stuff, and global warming crisis. Well, and made themselves extremely vulnerable to Russia. Like Russia now, Russia's like, we don't care, we sell oil, whatever, you know.
That was pretty good.
And we make billions.
That's a pretty good impression.
Germany go
not
low,
as good
we
as
go
Evans,
high.
Jordan Peterson though. That was
really? Did he do it?
Oh, that was so
We love
good.
that. All about the gulags.
That's what it was. He goes to gulags.
They're gonna put us in the gulags. Oh,
Yeah, like, but everything is made from carbon.
yeah,
You know, like everything.
yeah.
So especially when you don't produce, you're not a net, exporter at all, man. You become the pawns of everybody else, especially Russia.
Yeah.
When you're next to somebody like that.
And,
Why would you do that?
I've heard it said that and seen proof that Russia actually funded green energy and
Sure.
sustainable
Sure
stuff to push that agenda so that they would
Undermine
be able to supply then make those billions. And it's kind of true. Kind of have to think that way a little bit, because that is security, having resources and having independence with resources, food, energy, pharmaceuticals. I mean, we're totally dependent on China for all of our pharmaceuticals, like 90%. So they can just be like, yep, no more antibiotics for you.
That's another good impression.
Seem very wise at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yikes.
But it was so cheap. They were willing to do it. And frankly, they're not dumb. They know they were willing to take that on because they saw it as a way to gain power and gain control.
Influence.
Yep. So anyway, I don't know where you want to go.
Yeah. So making yourself, because we would pride ourselves on being a net exporter in certain administrations. And how valuable that is to lowering costs and well-being of your everyday families.
Right.
Like even just oil.
Right.
Good example. And also we produce it pretty cleanly, if that's even a word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Compared to the rest of the world who we are now importing from.
Exactly.
So where is the rationale? Is it
It's just appearances. It's just to look like we're not producing, to be able to say we're not having, pipelines go through Indian lands. That was a whole thing.
So it's what is the word? Just for appearances and for
performative or
Yep.
It's just window dressing or whatever. Yeah. Yep.
It's a shame. It's a shame. You gotta be careful for that stuff.
Yeah, you do. I mean, hopefully we can get squared away on that a little bit more. I mean, that's one of Elon Musk's things. He's so, in a lot of ways, so practical.
Yeah. Virtue signaling. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. Right. That's a lot of what it is. Virtue signal. It's like what
Look
what
how
price?
good we are.
Yeah.
But at what price? Yeah.
Yep. There's nothing virtuous about giving up, rational control, wise control of things.
Yep.
Sure, changing your ways if you're polluting badly or you're
Right.
causing human rights things. And that's another thing. I mean, so now you're doing solar panels, but you've got little kids over in China scooping with shovels dirt to be processed into the cobalt and the cadmium and the lithium. And so.
It's a weird game.
It is.
It's a weird game.
Yep. Got nets outside the Foxconn windows.
What?
Got nets outside the Foxconn windows so people don't jump out because they hate their job so much. Slave labor and all that. Yep. We buy the phones.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But we buy the phones anyway. Yeah. Did you know that?
What is the book? Blue Cobalt? Is that the Cobalt Blue? There's a book came out. The guy went on Joe Rogan because we're pretty much like on the same level as Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Like he's interviewing Trump today, and we're
just call him
interviewing you.
Joe. I know. I know who you're talking about.
I just call him Jay.
He's on Joe.
So just so you know, the day that Rogan had Trump on, we had Andy Jennings on, and it's you like that.
I wonder which one will get more views, huh?
I think that we're going to release it the same time as them to try to take away from their viewership.
A little bit of a cage match between Easier Said and the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah, he heard you were coming on. He was like, "That's time to have Trump
man,
on."
now we got to compete with
Do
us.
something here. Think.
Oh yeah, I think everything's a lot deeper than the surface level what we're being told, and you have to be wise. You have to be wise. So a lot of the stuff that we talked with Evan about in episode 24 was kind of where Christians' roles are in some of this stuff. It's very easy to get over political to to move the needle on your values,
Yep.
or to become susceptible to the machine itself.
Yep.
And become ingrained. So I don't know if you really want to get in too much to that, but even more so to the
With pleasure.
by all means. Yeah. So where's Christians' place in politics?
Yep. Well, I think it's fair to say that different people can have different seasons, different, places, because I had nothing to do with politics. That might surprise you, but 10 years ago, I wasn't interested at all. I voted, but that was pretty much it. And I just, wasn't a big concern of mine. I wasn't really concerned with international events a little bit, but not that much. And yeah, politicians and all. I couldn't have told you who was the big names and what they were dealing with and the big policy issues. And we were farming, we were raising kids, we were busy.
Yeah.
We were doing church 5 times a week, whatever it was.
Right.
6. But
yeah, no, really.
it was, yeah.
Yep.
The doors were open,
we were there.
We were there. So I think that's fair to say that different Christians have different roles, but in general, I think it makes sense to stay informed, and to try to vote in ways that are going to promote your values, what's on your conscience, what's on your mind as far as where things need to go. And that definitely makes for different voting habits within small groups sometimes, because people just see things differently. But I definitely think that I certainly want to have Christian politicians, Christian officials in the mix, because it's just the whole mindset, the whole mentality gets represented. I see a lot more. I don't know, because again, I wasn't involved, but I see a lot more of, especially in the Republican Party, a lot more of acknowledging God, a lot more of prayer and the Bible, and so I think that's good. I think it's important. It certainly was our heritage from the past.
Right.
The Exodus is like the most cited, quoted, used text in all of the Constitution, Declaration, all that. The Book of Exodus, as an example. Lots of other books of the Bible and verses and concepts, but I'm saying even compared to like other philosophies or like Roman whatever, or Plato and the Greeks, it was the Bible that was the most quoted and sourced, and so yeah, and I think sticking with it, it's worked well because that was the foundation, and it's worth sticking with it and having Christian leaders and Christian values get promoted and accentuated, but by the same token, it's a tricky thing to get into the system.
Yeah, how does that work with the balance between what the federal level has a say on versus what the state should be in charge of? Because where do you want those values having the most effect? Because some things you'd like to see on a federal level, according to those Christian values, the federal government shouldn't have a say on, and some things should be left to the states. So do you have any like thoughts on that? Have you thought about state issues versus federal issues?
Yeah, for sure.
Because the federal government tends to as we move forward in time, the federal government, I feel, tends to get more liberal quicker than states do. Yeah. And so as Christians, we're watching the federal government, which we vote every 4 years on that level. It's the most in your face, but it's almost like don't forget that you maybe shouldn't care as much about that as you should.
Right.
What the state should be in charge of, because really that's where the importance of government lies, is keeping the states really in charge individually. Yeah,
I definitely think there should be a smaller federal government, and it should stay. The federal government should mostly be there to set the structure, to sort of maintain the heritage and the structure of constitutional government, and be sort of a, like the Supreme Court, to be kind of a what do I want to say, umpire of last resort to sort of go to and say, okay, here's the final declaration on that, but not on every issue, not on every little issue. Like Moses, assigned, what was it, like 70 elders to be judges because he was too overworked with hearing every case of every grievance.
Yeah.
And he had 70 appointed judges. And then if they couldn't decide, it would go to him. But mostly it was decided there and, in the camp, in that part of the camp with that judge, and it was all, it worked. Anyway, so I think the federal government shouldn't be dealing with all the minutia of what every rule is and all that stuff. And like Department of Education, definitely. You remember that Javier Milei? Oh, the guy from Argentina. You got to look at it. When he was doing his thing, he's like, Department of Education, gone.
Yeah, he throws him off the board. Yeah. That was just recently.
Yeah, it was only about a year
last year ago.
Yeah, he's doing well. But anyway, that's my biggest pet peeve. But all this FBI and intelligence, there's just way too much. It's getting it's a vacuum that's just sucking up resources, and because it's far away and it's able to just kind of breed itself. Whereas I think that should be purposely kept small, and then state governments should deal with a bunch of the other stuff. And then local governments should deal, like schools. Maybe you have a state Department of Education where they're promoting, I don't know, kind of giving vision or whatever, promoting some things. But pretty much local people should be doing their local schools and
decentralizing a lot of the power.
I can think of a few things that need to remain.
Yep.
So you don't mean, obviously you don't mean zero federal government.
No.
No. But yeah, that's a very good point. National security.
Yep.
It's got to be one.
Yep, clearly.
Some kind of foreign affairs needs to be held in place because as a country we have to deal with other people.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't know. Yeah. Maybe
I mean, what is it? Promote the general welfare, provide for the common defense. Okay, right there, they're actually providing for the common defense. So they're in charge of that. Promoting the general welfare, that sounds to me like they're just sort of, helping to like keep states from having too high of boundaries between each other so things can flow. And you don't have one state in the middle of 4 others that's just kind of blocking, and everyone has to go around because they're just jerks and they charge huge tolls or whatever. But I don't think the federal government should be looking at every issue and ruling on that. I think
I don't want not to put you on the spot, and if you don't, that's fine. But do you have? You mentioned the Department of Education already. What are some that need to get cut right off the top?
Of departments?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Things that they shouldn't have an opinion on.
Like I said, the FBI should be a lot smaller. The CIA should be a lot smaller. I mean, military intelligence can deal with a lot of that stuff, and they have a very vested interest in keeping soldiers safe overseas, But I mean, I'm trying to even think what departments there are. Obviously, transportation.
Even just
you want
platforms or topics.
You want like you've got national transportation makes sense because you've got national transportation networks that have to coordinate. Like rails have to run on the same gauge. You can't have them having to be switching over. It doesn't make any sense. But they're just
healthcare.
Any of them. Yeah, healthcare. I mean, that's the CDC. All that stuff's way too big, way too influential, and bought into. It's totally married to the drug profits and all that.
How big was healthcare before Obama? Like, or was it non as far as the federal government's involvement in regulating healthcare? Was it pretty much non-existent? Has it?
It's just been growing and growing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
As they add, so you got the FDA, which is kind of an agriculture. It's sort of the food and agricultural side of that, but also pharma. And then you've got CDC, and then NIH is like research. And I don't know where. I think NIH probably also has to do with medical, like the medical associations, which those are weird things anyway. Medical associations are just professional associations where people just came up with the rules together and were like, well, we should do this. And then it's just grown and grown until
nothing was voted on.
Yeah,
right.
Party
back when doctors just did the best they could. They got the best learning they could. They were accountable, though, to the people who were paying them in the town. They weren't accountable to, they had the resource of certain professional organizations that would send out newsletters. Oh, we figured out this and try this. But it wasn't like this mega, like where taught the students, and it controlled where they went
Yep.
to their medical school, and then it controlled where they got their,
singular curriculum and
internships and that. Yeah.
I just listened to a podcast recently, and they were talking about the huge percentage of doctors who aren't taught nutrition. What is that about?
I don't know. I haven't.
Like, it shouldn't that be? I would think that would be such a core tenet of your curriculum.
Seems like that nowadays.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't.
Maybe
I mean,
it wasn't obvious to them.
So are they just?
15 years ago,
Is it all just so captured and all?
Too big a snowball to stop.
it's so specialized. It's so. I think people kind of mentally, as well as just actually, depend on and think of it as such a thing. Whereas really, just healthy food. Like mom did most of the medical care. Unless it was you're showing bone or bleeding. Then dad got in on it and splinted things up. But no, I mean, you called the doctor. But mom did most of the remedies, and and the nutrition was healthy. So you kept kids alive and healthy and growing. But it's I think we've kind of made it too expert focused. It's like just
a little too bloated, too influential.
Bloated, too much emphasis on that.
And especially when like pharmaceutical companies are advertising on like news networks and stuff like that, it's such a weird feeling.
Yeah.
Because then it makes you feel like the news is bought and paid for on certain storylines, especially when you throw in a global pandemic in there.
Because it is.
Exactly. So then you're like, can I trust anybody anymore?
Yeah.
From real information? Like, not really. And it's become so bloated. It kind of goes back to your point before too. Like, why do we have such an emphasis on elections every 4 years for the presidential, election? It's because probably the executive branch has become so bloated in responsibility that there's a lot of effects that a president can have that bypass some of the other legislative processes or whatever through executive order. So I wonder if maybe that's why people are so in tune now to what's going on, or at least focusing
billions and billions of dollars go through it. And have you ever heard the term rent seeking? It's like when people try to make regulations or structures, economic structures or whatever, so that the money keeps going through them.
Yeah,
it's called rent seeking. It's this incentive to build those things up because there's so much money being made, and there's so much more that could be done. It's sort of, that's the good side of it. Like, there's so much more we could do for people, but the reality is there's so much more money we could capture and flow through here, and I get to grab my salary out of that. And
there's no incentive to make anything better in these different massive departments when like jobs depend on them, not the problem never going away.
There's some of that too, But
anyway. So the answer to that would be limited government.
Yeah,
shrinking everything a little bit, sending more power to the states, more local level stuff.
Yep.
That kind of brings me.
I cannot see that ever happening.
No, it's hard to see that, especially right now.
I mean, that is people hate Trump, and people are so offended by his stuff, and a lot of there's offensive stuff there. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, he sees the value in decentralizing that stuff, getting that out of DC, and he's someone who's willing to do it. And obviously he's willing to do it because he's taken a ton of grief and, lost a ton of money and gotten shot in a ton of his upper ear. And
crazy.
But he's willing to do it.
Yep.
He's the wrecking ball. And it's like, wrecking balls wreck things, but the idea is we're pointing in the right direction to just take some of those things out, not to be malicious, just because that's what has to happen, and nobody wants to do it. Not the people that have their hands on the controls over there; they just want to keep building.
Is there evidence that is true from his first presidency? I mean, there was drain
that he got some done.
Yeah, that like the idea of reducing the federal government and decentralizing things. Did that occur?
Somewhat.
Was he successful in that?
Unfortunately,
can't do it in 8 years.
Unfortunately, there was tons of Republicans, the rhinos that
bureaucracies.
Of course, bureaucracies, but even tons of Republicans. Like the bureaucrats obviously can pull strings and do things and screw things up and whatever. But rhinos that are sold out, big money, playing golf with the donors,
Sure.
the lobbyists.
Yep.
Just don't have the incentive there, and they've been there for 40 years, and they're just like, yeah, that's a good idea, Don, but we just not this time. Next term, maybe. If you do a good job, we'll let you get some of your things. But he actually did. I mean, they had a thing where there was he said for every new regulation, 2 of them have to go. I won't sign anything that's not. So you had 1 in, 2 out.
Cutting regulations is a big thing.
Yep.
For that might affect you on a daily basis. Like you're starting a business,
right?
Or you're working through your tax code, you're doing whatever.
Yep.
Then like some of those regulation cuts, you can feel in your pocket. You can feel in the ease of life. I remember being in my police work and seeing the difference in my check. I'm not a 1%er. I felt the difference in that policy immediately.
Right.
I saw it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean,
he did
a lot of that. He didn't get the big, wasn't able to repeal Obamacare.
Yep.
McCain blocked him on that at the last minute after telling him he wouldn't. And, things like that where it was, Paul Ryan was terrible Speaker of the House, totally blocked Trump on everything. Kind of, I don't know if he took offense at something or what, but he was just useless. He blocked him. And so he wasn't able to put through a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, like a big criticism of the movement behind Trump to drain the swamp, that it didn't really happen as much as he thought it was because of, they would say, you had the House, you had the Senate, why didn't you get anything done? Right. It's like, that doesn't, just because you have the numbers technically doesn't mean you have what it takes to push it over the top.
Right. Because he didn't have the loyalty and the buy-in of a lot of the Republicans,
establishment Republicans. Yeah.
Because they had a system. They're like, the system's working, man. We'll it was always soon, someday we'll do that. But right now we gotta, we got the next election to worry about. Yeah.
Yep.
And he fired up the excavator, but even rhinos were dumping sugar in the tank of his excavator, and he couldn't.
Well, that's interesting that you said about their elections coming up too, which for a lot of senators, like once the presidential election's over, most of them are running again, like start their campaigns immediately for the 2 years from now.
Right.
Or wherever they are in their term.
Right.
So like they have to think about those things too.
They do. Yeah.
I can't make my donors angry. I can't make my constituents angry. There's a lot of politics.
But that's the thing about strong leadership and really, sort of very charismatic or principled. I know, and people will be like, Trump principled, but on those things, on certain things, definitely, principled about foreign policy stuff and about draining the swamp and decreasing the power of the federal government and the waste of the federal government. And anyway, but to have, and I think that momentum has really built a lot.
Yeah.
Even though it was painful these 4 years, there's been a ton of momentum in media. There's been a ton of conservative media that have come through the fire of being canceled, being deplatformed, and a ton of
being right in most cases too, by the way.
Right. And and just proving right again and again.
Yeah.
I think that's going to show in this election. I really do. But there definitely has, state GOP, like you think about the inner workings of the government. Mm-hmm. Like you've got to have your GOP boards be somewhat, MAGA, whatever you want to call it, America First, Trump or
in line with the presidential.
Because if they're all just country club old boys and old girls, they'll just stop it. Yeah, they stop it. They're just like, we're not going to fund that race. Sorry.
Yeah, the status quo is working for me.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll stay with that.
And there was a ton in 2022. That was painful seeing these excellent candidates just get no funding from Mitch McConnell and from Kevin McCarthy. You're just like,
because they were running on the American First ticket and backed by Trump, but the establishment, McConnell's and so on and so forth, kind of put a squash to that.
Right.
And the RNC chair.
Because the lobbyists of these big government departments and agencies were like, no, you promised us and we paid you so much and we've done so much over the years to work with you. McConnell, you owe us. And he'd be like, all right, well, I won't fund Carrie Lake out in Arizona because she's too MAGA and she's, Anyway, it was that was rough, but those people pushed through, and I think it's GOP boards now are way more like instead of having 1 out of 10 MAGA people, they've got like 8 out of 10. So it's just a huge shift.
So it'll be a very good. This episode's going to release the day before Election Day.
Oh yeah.
Election Tuesday. So I think that one thing that I would mention too is it seems like no matter what happens with Trump, the movement's been started. The kind of anti-establishment movement is on its way.
Yep.
And the shame, I'm not going to say the shame of his character. I don't know him. So I'm not going to make judgments on his character or anybody else for an official public opinion. But I wish sometimes that his demeanor and the things that he says was a little bit more cohesive and a little less lambastic. And because I think the stuff he stands for, is like, yep. And maybe that's even paving the way for somebody else to walk through who might be able to bring in the 49% of Christians who don't vote. 49%.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's, I don't know, you know, it says in, what is it, Corinthians or something, it says God uses the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. And I'm not claiming to be wise, but I'm definitely confounded sometimes by Trump and all his, the different aspects. But
and
the fact of the matter is,
how much should we let the brashness of what he says in the exterior and stuff and support some of the ideas and the policy and the even biblical values maybe.
Yep.
Even though he may cite that, I don't know his walk. I don't know anything like that. Right. He will cite that.
But he supports it.
Exactly.
He may not live it. He may not know it all that well, but he thinks it's a good thing.
Yeah. I
like that. You know, I'll take it. And the other thing is a couple things on that. He obviously the mainstream media just amplifies anything negative. Mm-hmm. So it looks like to the casual consumer of mainstream normal media, it looks like he's just horrific.
Sure.
You know, whereas if you look at the other aspects, there's a lot of good things he's done. A lot of the times when he's talking, I mean, a lot of his humor goes into that brashness or can get sound-bited to be a kind of really coarse thing to say. But if you listen to the whole speech, it's just kind of funny. And he's like, he's a comedian. He's a stand-up comedian. He really is.
Yeah.
That's definitely one of his things. And you're kind of like, oh boy, I don't really want a stand-up comedian for president. But that was the other aspect is people know him. He's world famous. You just can't overcome that and be like, no, we need another candidate. It's like, no, but people know him and they want him. A certain 30% subset of America. Mm-hmm. Who may not have super strong Christian values and really be focused on that. So for Christians who are focused on that, it's like, this is terrible. But for those people, they're like, we know him, we trust him, we like him, we just want him. And so you're just going to throw that away. You're just going to be like, no, we don't want that 30% voting block because, because it's just too ugly.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe you do. That's fine. But I don't. I can't see that. You know, it's a slice in time. Donald Trump will pass away.
Yeah.
You know, pass into
it's
history.
It's a chess move for the future.
Exactly. And, we'll see. But
yeah. So what Evan said.
Even if what?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I don't know where you got that from.
Even if the carrier isn't maybe what we would prefer in a lot of the elements that person might bring, what they're carrying maybe is what's important.
Yeah. Well, the whole art of the deal, his whole art of the deal making, like foreign policy wise.
Yeah, sure.
That's huge.
Yep.
It's huge. I mean, the wars and horrific stuff that's happened the past 4 years because people don't know how to make a deal and project strength and just project mystery. I mean, you can't go in with, this is all we'll do, or we'll be willing to give this up at the start. And
you have to keep some of that close to the vest.
Yeah, exactly. But the deal, I mean, it's huge. And I love this one. I saw this one meme yesterday or something where it showed like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and Tim Walz or whatever. And it's like, or maybe it was just Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, maybe one other former Republican. And then it showed Elon Musk and J.D. Vance and maybe Vivek Ramaswamy. It's like, Trump traded these for this.
Yeah,
He totally knows the art of the deal. Come on.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
Yep.
Yeah,
We definitely
that's
got
crazy.
some
And Tulsi.
really good leaders. Tulsi. Yeah,
Tulsi
right.
Gabbard.
Yeah, Tulsi.
Yep.
Yeah, she was
Yeah,
a big.
they're
Oh yeah,
jumping
Robert
RFK.
F. Kennedy Jr., Elon Musk, and Tulsi Gabbard. That was the three that were.
Yeah,
it's like
it's quite a coalition.
I'll take that. I'll take that
Yeah.
exchange. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that just people, it's hard for people to get behind somebody who they don't think is the right vessel, even if what the vessel is carrying is
Right.
better than the
Got some
alternative.
ugly graffiti on the outside. You're just
Yeah.
like, oh, I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got to stay away from the Al Smith dinners.
Oh golly.
Those jokes,
I thought that
those
was
jokes do
gold.
not help him in that department.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, the
I
Tim
thought it
Walz
was-
joke, all of them.
Oh, yeah,
the-
yeah.
Oh,
For
I was
sure.
dying. I was
Yeah,
dying.
they're
I didn't
hilarious,
watch all
but
of it, but I
not-
watched a few, and
not
I was
helping
like,
his case.
ooh.
Yeah, hilarious.
I mean, those jokes hit home with the people that are already voting for him. Like, they're not helping a whole lot with
Yeah, sure.
changing people's minds, that's for sure. But they
Yeah,
are funny
I
sometimes.
think that's right.
They are funny.
Yeah, I think that's right. The 49% of Christians, I think, probably looked at that and were like, no.
Yeah, at a Catholic fundraiser dinner, which is the weirdest
Yeah, some
thing.
of those jokes are a little.
Yeah, like raising money to fix children's hunger in New York City. It's a Catholic event.
Yeah.
And those are the jokes they're making. Like,
maybe
it's a
didn't-
weird
I
world
maybe
we
didn't
live
watch
in.
enough of it.
Yeah.
'cause
No, I mean, like,
I-
he got his jabs in, and that's kind of the whole point of the dinner, really, is,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
To roast each other.
To roast
and
each
everybody
other, yeah.
laughs, and Hillary sat right next to him 2016 and
Yeah.
2020.
Oh yeah,
years
that was
And-
that was even more painful.
What a weird thing. And now he's being blamed for E. coli breakout too. Did you hear about that?
I saw that. Yeah,
Worked at McDonald's. And,
I posted something.
So that is
about
something that I also.
Coincidence that it happened a day later.
oh, really? Yeah. Well, there's like
My,
40 cases of E. coli or something, right? Like, it wasn't even a huge, and like a certain percentage
And
of
it's-
them
and
had
it's-
8 quarter pounders, and so now it's Trump's
thought
fault.
to be. It's thought to be linked. It's not like it's absolutely shown. To be.
Sure.
It's just anyway. So what were you gonna say?
I think in my internal calculations in my brain, I do take into account the way that he's treated, the negative press, the agendas that are literally out to make him look as bad as possible. I mean, we're quoting Germany's dictators and putting him in the same conversation. Like, we need to put that into perspective a little bit and understand that what you're told is probably not even close to the full picture. Good people on both sides. I don't know how many quotes I need to go through where it was completely out of context and not what he said, but that's what people will say. It's the first thing.
Right.
He called neo-Nazis great. And like, no, like, come on. So that is a part. There's also a part of what are the core values? What is he trying to do? And then are those two things enough for me to get over some of the stuff he might say I don't like?
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And yeah, that's a big yes for me. But the other big thing that is just very dangerous is the whole media, the bias, and if they were remotely close to sort of presenting both sides and like questioning Joe Biden about the whole Hunter Biden and that whole corruption, if they had been
Charisma,
open about
Ukraine.
that and let that come out and be transparent, let people decide. Let people decide if they think that's more important or if they think whatever.
Yeah, and then that stems into the censorship side of
Right.
things, and it is slippery slope
It's
towards
thought manipulation, and that
Yeah.
just cannot be in politics. There's got to be as much openness as possible. Obviously, you've only got so many hours in the news in the newscast at night, but
right.
it's obvious that there's just a really strong manipulation one way, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah. The latest one is that everybody, even I think it was even at a town hall that Kamala Harris did, they're all alluding to the way that they look for the latest jab. Like, what's the latest thing we can take out of context and like spin it.
Right.
And it's wild what like the things that it's slander. Like, there's just potential lawsuits everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And the latest one is like that. Yeah, like, you're going to vote for a guy who said that anybody who disagrees with him in government, they'll get rid of. He'll get rid of. Like, that's just like insane to say that.
Right. He didn't say anything like that.
Meanwhile, there is footage of Joe Biden saying we need to lock him up.
Right.
Like, footage, but we don't talk about that. Like, Trump's the bad guy.
Well, and they're just doing endless lawsuits, and I mean, not just against Trump, against pro-life, activists, against the whole J6 thing, and the prisoners of that is beyond ridiculous and Stalinist, but anyway, it's yeah, they know that the media's got them backed up. They actually know that the courts, most times, lawyers and courts have them backed up, and it's just so they can do it. They can get away with it. They know that the lawsuits will go nowhere if they do these defamation lawsuits. So.
Well, then you have people running for positions or being a judge or an attorney, district attorney, whatever it is, on getting the guy out. And then you're like surprised when all of this stuff happens and he's being,
Right.
Yeah. Anyways.
Right.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
crazy to see.
Because they're not being held to the actual professional standards of Justice Department. They're just like, yeah, this is more important. Supposedly he's going to be a dictator. So kind of all bets are off. We can do whatever we got to do.
That's the scary part, right? Because if you convince yourself that the other person is the new Hitler, then you start to embolden nefarious action that you wouldn't have otherwise have taken.
Right. To
go to new heights to remove that threat or make sure that it can't happen again or whatever.
Yeah. So, And I mean, so getting back to where does Christianity feed into that? How does that, sort of shine light on and inform our politics? It's just, we do have to hold ourselves to our standards and to the, the biblical standard as far as those things go. And I think persuasive speech, voting, running for office, exposing things, that's all that has to happen, and it's just got to happen more. But as far as like underhanded stuff, cheating and anything along those lines, you obviously can't do it. And payoffs and stuff like that, you don't do that, but you also don't just pull away from politics because it's muddy and dirty.
Right.
You have to. There's some people, and you've got people in the church that are willing to, and that should be fine to get in and get a little dirty and not dirty, get muddied up by the process and do some of the work that needs to be done. So,
speaking of that, speaking of decentralizing government and getting our hands dirty, you. A couple years ago now, or was it last year you ran for school board in Loudville?
2 years ago I ran for it, and then last year.
Okay.
And this year, last year.
What I'm assuming that just from this conversation so far, we can ascertain your motivations for doing that. Just getting an idea of how important it is that we get involved in government. What were your specific reasons for wanting to do that?
I mean, I think a lot of it was just because it was like, okay, that's a simple place to get, because I have a family, I've got our businesses and a lot of commitments, so I couldn't just, and I don't have that much money, couldn't just run for office on a bigger scale, and you kind of need to do the farm leagues anyway before you get into the big time. A few people jump in right off of something else, but anyway, so for me it was just made sense, and I newly had put my daughters in school. My two youngest we were homeschooled for 20 years and then or more, and but we had just put our girls in school, so I was looking at the realities of it and getting reports back from them about what they were seeing and what they were hearing. And so I was like, you know what, I want to have some influence on that. I'd like to know more about it, and just to get involved, even just to learn more about it was important. And I thought might as well run for it while I'm learning more about it. And first time, 2022?
Yep.
I ran for it, and I just pretty much did some Facebook stuff. I didn't even do signs. I didn't campaign at all. I don't think we had a meet the candidates night. Anyway, and I went to the Congo right during the end of the campaign. Yeah, I wasn't even there for the voting, so it wasn't a very serious campaign. But I just thought, well, we'll see what it takes. What'll I get if I do that? Put out on Facebook some statements and hit message people to build up some support. And I think I got 150 votes out of maybe 400. I think it was 150 to 250.
Wow.
The other person got. And so, I obviously didn't have the amount of support I would have needed. But anyway, then this time around, I was going against Mike Young, and I think this is interesting. But anyway, I think I got 250 votes this time. So I definitely grew my support base, and that was interesting just to see. I did signs. I did a little bit more in the way of campaigning, but I was gone to Bali. Right, you know, it was a trip that we could take, and
so campaign management is. As far as your traveling schedule,
well, actually, we were committed to that before I decided to run again.
That's funny.
People encouraged me, like, "No, you should run again. You should run again." I was like, "I already have a trip to Bali that's like right in the middle of the campaign." I was actually home to vote, so that was good this time. That was an improvement. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't able to be at the Meet the Candidates night. I had to make a video,
which is pretty
in
big.
the JFK terminal of my little introduction speech. They allowed me to give a little video thing, so that was
is that held right at the school?
At the school, yeah.
And they do that. They live stream that on Lincoln Lewis County. Or?
I don't know. Maybe they did. I don't know if they live streamed
it. Seems like Easier Said podcast ought to get
beyond.
Maybe we'll have a meet your candidate segment.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be good. That would be good.
I had thought about that when Carpinelli was running for sheriff again. It would have been fun to have both candidates here who were both running.
Right, yeah.
Mini debate, or at least just get to know who people are.
We had one at the school.
Yeah, I saw
Republican
that.
Party.
I
I helped with that, and that's great. And I like that kind of thing. I mean, it's really, it's good to have people get up and speak, and you can see how they carry themselves. You can hear what they have to say and what they're focused on. And I was glad Carpinelli won, but no shade on that lady who ran, but I didn't love her. Yeah, she was very sort of. It was going to be data driven and all this stuff, and I was just like, I like a sheriff that's out there. And
boots on the ground
a little bit more Andy Griffith style.
Yeah, I mean,
in a small community.
Yeah,
we talked to him about that.
Yeah,
well, I
didn't
also, I mean, in order to be able to run in a position like that in a smaller community, you have to be more in tune and with the community. And if you're more data and this is the law says and whatever. I don't know her, but I don't, maybe I would agree with her on almost everything. But like I do know Carpinelli now a little bit more, and he's very much that way. Mm-hmm. Seems like a man of the people.
Yeah,
level-headed,
very
not
conservative.
Like this is the law. I have to do this.
I actually, I helped a little bit with his campaign, and I was very, I was hoping that maybe something would come of that. But then, what happened? I guess. Lee
with the governorship
race?
The
governorship race. Lee
Zeldin
clearly took over that, and
he made a pretty good run.
He had a great run.
43%.
I actually did most campaigning for him. I was in Baldwinsville doing door knocking and doing like data collection, little surveys with people, and he came close. I mean,
I thought he did well.
Yeah,
it's nice to see. The reason I like this kind of setting is because it's a little bit less performative. It's just a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was nice. It was really nice to have Carpinelli in that setting where like we were goofing around and we were talking and we got into the depths of some things, but also like a
little more relaxed. Defense is not so not up at all.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no pressure.
Nice. Yeah. For him, I'm sure he goes into most conversations like about this stuff, and like the people talking to him aren't like they're more of an aggressor.
Yeah, sure.
Type of position.
No,
so maybe it was nice to just have a conversation.
Separately, doing the podcast and separately, interview separately is probably a better way to go in a way. Mm-hmm. Although you want to see what they'll do in a more tense sort of debate situation too. But
for sure, how can they handle themselves? And he has a lot of experience in inner city policing and stuff like that too, which tells a lot about your character and how you can address difficult situations on a regular basis. For sure.
How often are school board elections, besides when somebody is vacating?
Yeah, well, it's pretty much every year someone is vacating. There's some.
Is there a term limit though?
Yeah, I think there is. I want to say it's 5 years, but it might be 3. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But they're staggered.
Yeah.
People drop out.
Okay, so that's why you were running against different people.
Yeah.
So do you have plans to give it another go? Because I've seen a lot of local.
We'll see. Maybe it was interesting. So I don't know if you heard about the write-in campaign that was started. I think pretty much against me because it wasn't gonna hurt Mike Young's. I don't think. But anyway, they popped up a candidate, a At least that was what someone told me, or different people told me.
Just take votes away.
This John guy, to take votes away. But even if I'd gotten all his votes, I wouldn't have beat Mike.
Sure.
So,
and Mike,
and I'm
been
fine
around.
with Mike. I mean,
yeah,
I don't mind Mike. So
we've known some people in our, I don't know what kind of community you would call it, because a lot of them would be friends, but there have been a few of our peers have been interested in the school board in the last couple of years, and I think that, I think it's interesting. We have a chance to get some, like, not just one, but 2, 3 people on the board to influence the decision making process, and so which I think is a really good thing, because I would agree with the reasons why you ran, and I think it's, I mean, to have not just one but a few people with that kind of influence would be a really great thing. Yeah,
no, I'm glad the people we do have on that have solid views about. I mean, obviously the whole trans thing is just nuts, and there's a lot of aspects, other things that are similar to that. DEI and that stuff gets pushed by the state, the government, the State Department a lot. And just to be able to, and the whole COVID thing, that was one of the things that really got me. Actually, I think that was probably the main thing that got me going.
School closures and masking.
School closures, masking, exactly. I mean, and I wrote letters to the superintendent and to the principal, and said, I don't think you should do this. We'll back you up if you decide to push back. And it didn't necessarily. I think it did actually. In the end, there was that when they sort of lifted some of the restrictions. Maybe it was in like February of 2022 or and finally started lifting. Like it became more optional, or there was like a Supreme Court decision against maybe masking, and in New York State, and telling your superintendent and your principal and stuff, expressing, we've got your back. Yeah. If you decide to do that, or hey, we think you should get your lawyers on pushing back, file a case, because they're not going to do it if they don't feel like they've got the support. They're not going to spend a bunch of money on lawyers if they feel like, well, then everyone's going to be mad at me because we can't get a new bus and we can't get new pads for the wrestling, mats or whatever.
I think also too, a good reason for people with these kinds of convictions and morals to be running for offices like that is it also helps keep accountable the people who are already in office, let's say. So if a candidate runs who has significant support and even loses, it's not necessarily a loss.
Right.
So there's waves in the community, and you can see movements in the community that help to keep people away from some of those dangerous initiatives that maybe otherwise would have just been accepted, instead of saying, if I accept this, it might not get me over that, my reelection bid, and maybe I need to do that. So I think that's good.
If I want to draw some of that support away from that candidate, I'm at least going to put that into my talking
common
points.
sense, or at least some common ground.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's totally true. I mean, that's why it makes sense to speak up. Obviously, you got to be respectful. Obviously, you got to be civil about it. But you don't want to stay silent and just be like, oh, well, it'll work out. Or I'm a Christian. I really shouldn't, get in the mix. Because
the ultimate motivations should be love,
right?
In general sense, for sure, but also for the people involved. But that you love them enough to speak truth, that you love them enough to carry out your moral convictions and stuff like that for their well-being too, even if they don't see it.
That's it. Yep. Yeah, 100%. And for the kids, I mean, but obviously people have a different angle on why that would be loving to do this. And I'd say, well, I think it'd be more loving to do this, but you got to debate it. You got to,
talk it out,
vote it, and see what comes out. Yeah. And everyone can see, well, that didn't work out, or that did work out. And and policy develops from there, but it was good. It was good exercise for sure.
I think, I don't want to keep you too long, but I mean, that's some good information. And also, one thing that I don't think we'll have time in, at least this time, if you'd ever come back, I would love to get your perspective on parenting, especially fatherhood, would be a great thing to get your ear about. Nick, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I'd love to. This is probably a deeper topic, but homeschooling for so long, and then the decision to allow your last two to attend public school, which I would assume that that was probably a conversation you had with them because maybe they had a desire to,
Right. It was,
and having to consider that and how to, get to the point where you could allow that desire in them to be fulfilled, and how hard or not hard that was for you as a parent and what went into that. I'd love to know more about that.
And the conversations between, you and your wife.
Yeah.
I'm sure those
that must have
there.
been tough.
Yes and no. I mean, both of us were kind of open to it at that point, and it was mainly because, you know how it is, family dynamics and the arc of a family. Like, the first kids are this way, but then when you've pretty much, you're not going to have any more kids, then the family starts to change and the whole dynamic changes and you transition into a new season. And Jane she was obviously academically very strong, wanted to kind of do that competitive, have something to compete with other kids, and so it was just something that, and just how things go. She had friends and influences that we were less in the homeschool community as much.
Yep.
And so she had friends that were in school, kind of wanted to be with them a little bit more, and they were good kids, and it's like, why not? Of course, Laval's a great school. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
And so that made sense for her. And then Phoebe, we were still thinking about keeping Phoebe home, and Phoebe still thought she wanted to be home. But then as time went on, she was like, no, actually, I think I'd like to go. And you could see that she had the character to be able to deal with it too.
That's important.
Yeah.
Yep.
You were sort of you sort of broke the barrier.
I did. I was the guinea pig.
Yeah. I mean, you were kind of the guinea pig for like the whole
community,
the whole Rama homeschool community.
I will take that mantle. Yeah. I will take that mantle.
And if you hadn't done so well, we might have been able to continue homeschooling. We could have stayed on the farm and
man, I can
really
tell
started
you
the commune.
What you were talking about with the moral character being built in from the beginning helped me like crazy in high school. I wasn't interested in garbage. I wasn't interested in nonsense. Where if I didn't have that homeschool foundation, like I think it's easier to get off that path. Not that kids can't do it, just going to school their whole lives. I'm not saying that, but for me personally, that helped a lot, and it opened up all kinds of doors.
Right,
it's kind of a win-win for me.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, the early years of homeschooling were really important in building that family cohesion and that sort of reserve of conviction and principles and stuff like that. Yeah. That then you can, sort of spend it a little bit, on whatever things, just fill in the blank there, but on kids being able to go to college and make it through without being, turning into Marxists or whatever. Yeah. And anyway.
Well, all your kids seem to be doing really well. So,
pretty well.
There's no
pretty well.
That's one of them
litness
recently had a stint of working for me at the cafe, and
so
I got to see a little bit firsthand and like,
she's quality.
She is, she's a great example to the other people. I'll stop in every once in a while, and we've all had jobs at that level, and she is a hard worker, and the integrity when I walk in and she's cleaning something and I'm like, man, like that right there is a huge deal. Like she's not just sitting there on her phone or something. Like, so I've witnessed it firsthand, like the character but yeah, you've done a great job, and maybe next time you can give us some tips.
Yeah. Some pointers.
I'd love to have, I'd like to see my kids be like that.
I'd love to talk parenting. That's definitely a near and dear, and that feeds into like the school board thing and the politics. I mean, that's one of my biggest focuses is like, how do you build character into kids and build resilience so they can deal with this garbage in the world, not be totally screwed up by it.
Off track. Yeah.
But
and cultivate generations to come.
But I'll give a preview. You can't completely, you definitely can't completely, you definitely have to let God carry some of it. And you don't want to think you can program your kids to be perfect or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You definitely have to leave room for them to make mistakes, for you to have made mistakes and not be like devastated by, why did we, this or that. But anyway. We'll get to it.
Right, that's great stuff. Yeah, thanks for being so generous with your time and coming and hanging out.
Yeah.
See you in the studio.
Thanks for taking care of the
good
preview
time.
for the next episode.
Yeah, thanks for it's a preview, right? Yeah, that's all we need.
Or your next episode. I
The
should
lead
say.
in.
Awesome.
No,
All right,
it's a great
well,
podcast.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
Really,
thanks.
You guys are doing a great job.
Appreciate it.
It's a cool thing.
Well,
appreciate it.
the guests are doing a great job. So.
Yeah, we're learning the most.
Yeah.
I love it. It's a great. I mean, I had thought about like having a debate society or something, but this kind of fulfills a lot of that in a way that gets way beyond just the level debate society that you could have. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, expand some of that vision and wisdom.
yeah.
So cool. All right, that's it. That's it
It's
for us.
easier
Thanks,
said than
Andy.
done, but you've done it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.